Ready? Okay, thank you very much for coming. Thank you to Jennifer and Mary for, I'm very humbled and honored that they thought I was doing something significant enough. I am very honored that you took your time to drive here, to listen to this. I guarantee you, this will be worth your time if you take this home and apply this on your farm. My name is Jared McCoy. I grew up around here. My wife Carrie and I live across the street. I speak with a Portis accent. I hope that don't trip you up too bad. I'm third, fourth generation farmer and rancher here in Osborne and Smith counties, but kind of had to start over again, so I'm more like a first generation farmer and rancher. I want to start with a few quotes here to get your mind conditioned and exercised to think a little differently. The first one, progress rarely comes from those who are content and comfortable, and I am neither. I had to figure out a way to feed cows, and I don't have machinery, I don't have a lot of established things to just pick up and use, but the biggest thing I did have was freedom. I didn't have Dad or Grandpa saying, we ain't gonna try that. And I had my own equipment, so I could try things as aggressively as my bank account would allow. Okay, the second one is, in order to have an epiphany, you gotta be looking for one. You gotta be open to having a revelation. So if you're here today because you wanna improve your soil health, cut your feed costs, cycle nutrients, weed control, all that stuff. If you want that to change, you're going to have to change. You're going to have to do things a little bit different. This one here is mine. You can spend a lot of money trying to beat a problem into submission when you maybe should be looking at a better idea. Stop trying to reinvent a bad idea. Just accept that it's a bad one and look for a better one. Perhaps it's always been a bad idea, or it could have just run its course. It could have been supported with cheap fuel and fertilizer, machinery, labor, none of which we have today. The last one, Gail Fuller from Emporia told me, if you want to make small changes, change the way you do things. If you want to make big changes, change the way you see things. Now that's kind of like popping LSD. And we'll take this farmer's acid trip. And when you wake up from that and your mind is broadened and your eyes are open and you're ready to look at things differently. And like I said, it is really important. We have got to try things. If you're lucky enough to start farming when you're 25 and you got any kind of freedom, what do you got? You got 40 chances. You can shoot 50 free throws a day, but you just don't get that many chances in farming and ranching. And I'm discouraged with, there's a lot of acres tied up with people that just, they cannot or will not try anything. I tried something new on a third of my acres from probably 11 to 15. The wife and I come back from no-till on the plains, and I'm like, we're not trying enough. And I settled into this stockpile feed concept and a couple of other things. If some of you have went out and tried to plant a cover crop, plant a cocktail, and if you've been discouraged with the results, I had better luck exploiting the traits that are available to us today and crops that take advantage of different seasons. Dale Strickler, that when he lived up here at Cortland, he had that test plot. I hope some of you were able to see that, where he had all those different forages planted in strips, and I just was blown away at all the differences and variations in just sorghum sudan, forage sorghum, millets. Those plants act differently, and you just as well use those traits to your advantage. Now, what if I told you that you could save at least $100 an acre feeding cows? And if I would stop right here, everybody in this room ought to go home and look for acres to apply this. $100 an acre, and that's a conservative number. That's just a check writing for the swather and baler man. I've wrote checks as high as 150. This concept was really hiding in plain sight So I'm going to ask you to plant a crop you're very familiar with, fits right in a traditional schedule, and it attacks your highest hay feeding time of year. I'm going to ask you to do a little something different, and all the side effects with this are positive. So, okay, we took our farmer's acid trip. We're ready to look at things differently. So what is stockpiled feed? Could be in a round bale, could be silage in a bunker or bag, could just be standing in the field. So here's where I'm going to ask you to do something different. Just leave it there and strip graze it. And there's two parts to this concept. There's benefits in crop production and benefits in the grazing. The hybrid and the traits that I found that works the best is the photoperiod sensitive sorghum sedan. I'll refer to that going forward as PPS. That trait's amazing. That plant is not stimulated to make a seed head until the autumn equinox, which around here is about September 20th. Now the particular one I use stretches that a little bit further. So it has no time to make grain, which reduces water and nitrogen use. And then all the sugars and the energy stay in the leaves and the plant, and that's what the cow eats. It doesn't put it into a hard-coated seed that she's going to struggle to digest. And it eliminates the planting window. You can plant this the 10th of May and just take advantage of all the rain, all the sunshine, because there's no maturity. And this stuff cheats drought tolerance. It'll just stop growing in a dry spell and wait until it rains, and then it just picks right back up and keeps growing again. And I get at least one message a year about this. This year it was a guy from Woodston. He said that he just wrote it off as dead. He thought, I'm just going to have to swath this off of here and do something else. And he caught a big rain. And it greened back up. And a week later he caught another good rain. And he sent me a picture, and it was taller than him, and he stands 6'4". So this stuff will almost come back from the dead. This is just southwest of town, the summer of 24, and we haven't got a ton of rain. We haven't really recovered from the drought around here. So here's the second part. Now after you leave it, just leave it in the field, the grazing benefits. But let's look at hay for really what it is. Hay is displaced nutrients. You put all that fertility into that soil, grew the hay, cut it, you're going to haul it somewhere else, cow's going to pass it through, you got to put that money right back on those acres. So hay is displaced nutrients, and eliminating the harvest cost, that's the big one right there. There's the impact to your wallet. That's an easy $100 an acre. Most of the time, this will just lay over about a third of the height that it was. So you've got a ready-made windbreak with the ungrazed feed. When you start strip grazing it, if you start from the south and move north, you got a ready-made windbreak, and you can use that windbreak whenever you want, at your discretion. You got 10, 12, 15 times that you can use it. This is a regenerative process. Regenerative ag is a big buzzword right now. If this ain't regenerative ag, I'll eat my socks, because you cycle everything right back in. And look at the cost of fertilizer right now. One of the best things you can do, don't let it leave. And there's no waste. I've had a lot of the old timers might say, well, how much of that are they going to waste? None. It's all even. It's right back in my field. All the manure, all the urine, the plant material that they didn't eat is just laid down flat, and it's all going to get cycled right back in. And it provides lasting residue. You'll be seeing this residue 2, maybe even 3 years down the road. You're still going to see evidence of that. It yields 100 cow days per acre. I commonly get 100 cow days per acre. I've got that much out of fall pears. Divide your crop production cost by 100 and ask yourself if you can feed cows any more cheaply, any other way. Kind of to wrap your mind, that 100 cow days per acre. If you got 50 acres, you're going to run 50 head on that for longer than 3 months. You drastically reduce machinery costs. Don't start a tractor. You're not starting something to feed every day, and no mechanical harvesting. And this, you can break the bacteria cycle. If you've heard of the sandhills calving method, where they move them to fresh grass, well, people around here will say, we don't have big ranches like that. I'm doing it on 40, 50 acres. Works well during calving season. When you've got them cows concentrated in a small paddock, you're not running around looking for number 123 that calved the other day and I want to look at her calf. You're shooting fish in a barrel. They're all right there for you to see. It eliminates problems with nitrates. I can use that word, I never have high nitrate stockpile feed. I quit testing it. I don't know what all's going on, if it's because you just let that plant run its normal life cycle and it just slows down and then kills with the frost. And then also they're not going to eat that bottom third of the stalk anyway. That's mostly what you're going to want to lay down as the residue. Ready-made windbreak, there's a calf laying in the ungrazed feed. A lot of times they do lay them down just up against that, but even if they don't, there's so much residue they're not laying on the cold ground.
Jerry, do you have a suggested variety of the sorghums again?
The photoperiod sensitive.
Oh, no, a specific variety, a specific name.
Like a brand name.
Yeah, a brand,
Pardon?
a brand name.
I sell Kelly Green brand seed, but I never thought I'd end up selling seed. I just did so much with forages and forage traits and was selling people on this concept. They're like, what are you doing there? And so I rolled into that. But it's important. I want to know about the forage traits. I want to know what's coming. And I want to know if what I'm selling expresses these traits, because they're valuable to you, they're going to be valuable to me. Had one guy call that said he bought some other seed and it shot ahead. Okay, well, I want to know if mine does that. Mine did not, but I want to know. Here's the kind of the difference in a paddock. That's fairly typical of what it's going to look like. What we're going to look at the field today, I'll just tell you, it is laying flatter than I have ever had it laid. It's just a little bit off of the ground. But typically this is what you've got for your ready-made windbreak.
We had a hailstorm in late September, and so that's what laid a lot of that down.
Then we had one bad windy day here. There's a new fence line set up. I just take the four-wheeler. I set my four-wheeler out front here today so you can see what I use. I just drive, make a couple passes, and knock it down. Generally speaking, I do not see how applying any machinery to this is going to make it any better. You're going to make it worse. Some people say they swathed a strip and they right away say, oh, I shouldn't have done that. Because hay is going to lay there, it's going to rot, and then you made some bare ground, and then you'll have some compaction just right in that strip. Maybe if you want, set up in the tractor, just set your loader bucket down so you can see where you're going, where you want to set your fence line. And this is common residue. And that's after yielding 100 cow days per acre. You're able to leave residue like that. There's some new babies hanging out around the four-wheeler as I probably just out there checking, or I don't remember what. There's a picture of the four-wheeler. I set it out outside. Local retired fellow welded that up for me so I can carry posts. It's got that one arm that the reel is on. I set on there side saddle, and I can grab a post and put it in, and I can carry a couple other reels and carry plenty of posts and a hammer. It usually takes 30 to 40 minutes to set up a new fence line and pick up the old one. And man, I just don't understand the comments about, oh, then I gotta move fence. Well, you make it sound like we're moving the Great Wall of China. We're not. This is pretty easy to do. And this just replaces the time that you're usually feeding with the feed wagon or whatever you do. I think this takes less time.
How many days, how often do you move?
That's totally up to you. The grazing experts will tell you that to change a cow's behavior from pick and choose to a harvesting behavior, you need to get down to 3-day moves or less. Well, here we go. Everybody's going to say, I can't move cows every 3 days. Well, you probably can at this time of year when you're feeding them, you're checking them. You know, whenever you're putting that time in, you're just replacing tasks is all that you're doing. A good rule of thumb that I like to use is 25 cows per acre. But don't worry about getting it. Don't worry about getting it perfect. Nothing is perfect. Pick your problems. Do you want your challenges based on displacing nutrients? All the challenges with putting up hay, expensive machinery? Or do you want your challenges based on saving that $100 an acre, allowing the cow to harvest her own feed, cycle nutrients back in the soil, leaving good residue, eliminating the nitrate risk, breaking the bacteria cycle, attacking your highest hay feeding time of year, and reducing the weed pressure in the subsequent crop? That cow, she will do all of this for you. She will harvest her own feed. She will cycle the nutrients back in the soil evenly for you for nothing if you just put her in the position to do that. And yeah, reducing weed pressure in the subsequent crops, I keep getting responses about that. This year, the guy over here by dispatch, he said the co-op sprayer operator called him from the field and said, do you even want me to run this? There is nothing here. And he noticed that all the way through the season that just had a lot less weed pressure. And I do not hear about a yield drag. Most of them say that field yielded what I expected for this year. Had some did better, some did worse, but for that field, that's a yield that I would have expected. That weed pressure, if you can eliminate them, if you can reduce them, if you can slow them down so that when you do make a herbicide pass, it's more effective, all those things are positive. This is on the farm research done with my money. Everything was funded by me and her. And this, I've done this for 15 years. I've tried a few different things. I've had some challenges along the way, but I found hired with the right traits that help for this to work well, and it pays well. I am all for soil health. We need to chase that, but I don't want the auctioneer to be the one to announce that the soil health is good on this farm. It has to pay, and this just pays well, and it appears to give you everything that you say you want. You give credit, Dale Strickler kind of got me started on this, but I think I kind of took it and perfected it. He was promoting it at the time as a double crop option, and this works great for that. Works great. But I'm planning it as a full season because I've got to have that. I've got to have the feed at this time of year, and So my biggest problem was those hot, dry spells. I usually don't have a problem with the total amount of rain that we get. Man, you hit one of them 4 to 6 week dry spells, and if you're trying to establish a crop, that don't turn out too good. And then here come those stupid weeds. And with this, when you're just planting sorghum sedan, if it comes up, you got weeds with it, you can go over it and hit it with that, with 2,4-D, dicamba, whatever, so you can address that. Reasons to start. This plugs right into a traditional schedule. Most of us put cattle to grass in the summer. They come in the fall, they go to corn stalks or milo stalks, and then about this time of the year they come home and we start feeding them harvested feed, and that's right where this plugs in. And it addresses that highest hay feeding time of year. Pays or saves that easy $100 an acre. You get lasting residue, cycle all those nutrients back in. Weed control, you can both address it in crop and then the subsequent crop is better. This fits a large or small operation. If you've got 50 head of cows and maybe you work a job in town or something, set up a few fence lines ahead of time and just have to open it and let them in. If you got 500 head of cows, you have to start to mass manage tasks. You don't have time to be choring that much. This fits with that. And you can set the schedule. You can set up some fence lines when the weather is good and be ready. And when the weather is nasty and it's time to move, you just open that up and let them in. The benefits go up per cow and per acre. You add a cow, you add an acre, and all the benefits come along with it. I started a Facebook group called Portis Feed and Seed, and I put a lot of videos on there, document things, and I'll just be as transparent and as real and honest with you as I possibly can. When you start out, thinking back to the first time I started, I set up a fence line and turned the cows out, and I was nervous. So if you're starting this, I offer counseling service for starting out. It's a little bit of a change. It's okay. And I just took a guess at the paddock size. I bought a handheld GPS. Maybe you can get an app on your phone now to measure. And I measured the field, and then you just observe. They made it 1 day, made it 2 days. Here's the 3rd day, and they're still doing good. There's still plenty to eat. I'm like, they might even make it a 4th. And at that point, I come home and I told my wife, I just feel stupid. Why have I tried to mess with a swather or baler, and why didn't I do this sooner? And at that first paddock, if you measure it, you can do the math, and you're going to know what your field is going to yield, how many grazing days you're going to get out of that field. And then it's just up to you. Do you want to grind it down and a little further, or do you want to leave this much residue, that much residue? It's all just up to you. So
Do you try and keep when you move them, does the ground almost bare, or you're going to leave them residue?
you're going to be able to leave a lot of residue. You've got so much volume. That PPS trait helps you grow. I hate to sound like a large-scale commodity cash grain farmer, but I got to have yield. If I got yield, then you can talk about all this other fun stuff, the pays, and then residue, nutrient cycling, all that stuff. You know, a few years ago, people were going back to planting some heritage wheat like Scout 66 because they said we can't even get enough straw to cover the ground. And this is kind of similar concept. I went back to a sorghum sedan, but we've got those traits that will help you. So, I'll take questions. Do not drive home saying, I wished I would have asked him this. You just get as rough with me as you want. Don't tell me this won't work. I am right off of 281. Really, the only two questions as to how will this work? Can I raise long stem sorghum sedan grass type crops, and do I have a cow? That's it. You can go right around the corner from my place. I had a neighbor that put up hundreds of bales of feed, fed them in a little lot, and then he'd come to town and complain about scours and perfringens, and then he had a manure spreader, and he'd spread this back out on the field. Right around the corner, 1 mile, and here's Jared, and he just lets the cow do it herself. So it's been hiding in plain sight. It's just, myself included, we just get conditioned with those have-tos, and we really don't have to. So, yeah, just get as rough.
So you go pasture, then stocks, and
Then this plugged right into that, but you can use it anytime you want after the prussic acid risk, or after you can use it anytime you want. I have had a couple people that would maybe graze across it in season and then let the regrowth come back up for winter stockpile. Yes.
Work after wheat?
Pardon?
Would it work planting it after wheat?
Yes, works great as in a double crop option. You know, it's just economical. I had a guy over in Jewell County that come and picked up seed in July, and he called back and said, now how many grazing days should I expect to get out of this? And I thought, okay, he picked up in July, planted after harvest. So I said, well, how tall did it get? I'm thinking, you know, he probably got 4 foot or so. He said, well, it's tractor cab high. Oh,
That's impressive.
okay, kid. I said, that's what I get. You know, if you strip graze it, you're going to get 100 days out of that. He said, oh my. I said, well, how many acres did you plant? 160. Okay, well, you're going to have some cows. I think he did rent part of it out to a neighbor. I have a field right up here on the county line that don't know that we can look at it today. I wanted to. I just treated it like Milo stalks. I just let them have the whole thing. And I started about the 10th of November, put 25 on there. Then I added 4, then I added 10. Yeah, I got up, I had 50 head there. And I know I would have made it on that 40-acre patch. The math would figure out a cow per acre for 90 days. But this snow storm came, and I can't get up that road. It's so close, but it's so far away. If I could have got up the road, I'd have left them there. I know I would have made it. Now I'm leaving tons of residue after that.
What's your cost per acre of seed?
Last year I was able to offer it at $60 a bag. I don't think that'll change much, so $25 an acre for seed cost. That's another thing. These traits are available to you, like the brachytic dwarfs, dry stalk. Dry stalk doesn't have as much moisture in the stalk, and then when your crimper hits it, it just shreds and it'll dry down. So if you need to put up some hay, that's a good option. And then this photoperiod sensitive, you can't hardly beat it for how it will work for you. Sadie, did you have?
How many cows would you start out with your first time doing this?
Doesn't matter if you got 1 or 10 or 100 or 1,000, but as far as the paddock size, just keep the 25 cows per acre is kind of a guideline. But don't worry about getting it perfect. Like I said, there's problems with this. I've had a fence line get blown down, or you're going to see where I moved this bunch of cows right before this storm. Well, they knocked the fence down, tore up a couple of bales. I guess that's what I'm gonna feed first. There's problems with everything, but it's more socially acceptable to have to pitch the feed wagon out when the floor chain breaks, you know, that's, seems to be okay, but if you have problems with this, boy, they wanna throw rocks at you. Snow really doesn't bother it. You got too much volume. And I'm back to that with the strip grazing is, you can plan this out. If that snow's coming, get ready for a move. And also, there's nothing wrong with unrolling a couple of bales. If that weather's coming, I'm set up, I'm ready to move, just can't quite do it, go unroll a couple of bales. And then give them that fresh patch the next day. That doesn't wreck this. If you aim for perfection and you miss, you probably hit excellence. And we would take that.
The cows will go back and start grazing after a storm.
Pardon?
I do some of the same thing. My cows was back out yesterday morning picking.
Yeah.
After that cold weather from the weekend.
Yeah. You've got all of that volume where that PPS helps you get that big crops.
You're taking down your back fence, I mean, the paddock that they came off of, did they get to travel back to that?
I set back fences, and that's, people may ask, what do you do when it gets wet? I rarely have that problem. I can only think of once that I felt like pulling them off. But if you back fence, and you do have an episode where it gets a little wet on you, well, that's isolated. Once you back fence, that's done. That's harvested, and you're done. But they walk up on top of that residue. You're able to leave that much residue. They're kind of up on top of that.
So do you make an alleyway back to water, or?
I have piped some water, and that is important. And that's probably the only thing I'll grant you that's a little bit of a stumbling block with making this work just perfect is piping some water. I'd like to pipe more. Give me 50 acres. There's $5,000. That'll pipe some water. And that's a one-time capital improvement that's gonna last you for years. I did a little research before today. You can buy that blue 200 PSI poly pipe. I bet you can get that down around 80 cents a foot. And I also think I'm gonna look into maybe just plowing it in, if you can get it 18 inches, 24 inches deep, and then utilize the freeze miser.
Yeah.
I've had a freeze miser on an open hydrant through 10 below weather, and it keeps that open.
Yeah.
So that's gonna keep that water going. I think there's options out there, some cheaper, effective options out there to pipe water. We don't need a tank of water hot enough to cook a weenie in. We just need it to kind of work.
I think on the moisture, I quit worrying about when it rains. Yeah, you're gonna have tracks, but the more you do this, if you're doing it on the same field year after year, your organic matter is building up, your soil's gonna absorb more moisture, and the residue is gonna keep, you're not gonna have that many tracks. You're gonna have some hard spots where they make their cow path to and from water or whatever, but I have not seen the problems, and Jared's on something here.
You wanna try to avoid the trails, and of course, more watering points is the answer. I have one field in particular, due to the shape of it, I can graze along, and then I have really got a pinwheel off of that one hydrant. So they made a trail, okay? Let's try to just have one. So I would come around as far as I could and leave that back fence, and then I kind of started going this way, so they would come back to the trail to water. So yes, I got a trail, but I only had one.
You're sacrificing 0.2 acres to
Yeah.
do awesome things on 100.
Yeah, there you go.
The field where you just turn them all in, how much, I mean, compared to like moving them every 4 days, just turn the whole herd into a field, how much do you think you lost, I mean, grazing days? compared to
Not
every-
much, not much. I made it 75 days on that field, and you're more than welcome to drive up and look. If you brought a pickup, you probably can. I know I would have hit 90 days. That was my intention, was to have them still there, and we could go look at that today, but
Well, that's what I wondered, I mean, if you have 150, 200 cows, if you put them in a 30-acre field, before could you just turn them in there?
sure you can. And any of the rotating you can do. It's, the best is to get down to 3-day moves. That's the best. But how much can you do? Have you got a 30 acre and a 15 and a 50, if you got those fields that you can move around, then do that. Just do the best you can until you can pipe some water. And like I said, and that $100 an acre right there in your pocket is significant.
So do you have designated fields that you just do this every year on, or are you rotating?
I need to do some rotating around. My goal that I set out to do was to try to go all winter without any harvested feed. And I don't have a lot of acres, and I don't have a lot to play with, so crop ground is precious. And so I kept track of how many acres of crop ground per cow. A lot of people don't look at that. I have to. I was getting dangerously close to going without any harvested feed at 6.5 to 7 acres of crop ground per cow. And I was trying to be as objective as I could. If I rented some corn stalks, I added those acres in. If they were my Milo stalks, maybe I put that in as like half. Half was the grain crop, half was not. I tried to put that all on the cow's back. The two things in this area to really utilize is my stockpile feed and cereal rye. I have had that ready to turn out on March 1st, screaming at me for needing cattle. More reasonable would be about March the 20th. You can start putting them out on that. And those two, the rye and the stockpile feed, they just almost overlap. You don't miss rain. If it rains at any time of the year, it's contributing to you growing some feed.
When do you plant cereal rye in winter?
You can plant that awful late. You can even,
You plant like winter wheat?
yeah.
They can be planted in February also.
It is so winter hardy. You get south of I-70, it don't hardly even go dormant. But that, you will need a pair per acre on that rye, and you will turn any cow into a Holstein. Her bag will just, the rule of cattle production is, don't let their body condition go down around calving time. I had a cow that, everybody's had one like this. She had her second calf. She was thin, had about a 50-pounder. I'm like, well, I can tell what this is gonna be. This will be a small calf and an open cow. I turned her out on that rye, and I swear she gained 150 pounds. And now you can't pick her out. Totally rehabilitated her. That is so full of soluble carbohydrates that I think my cows lose weight when they go out to grass, coming off a rye. And in 2023, that year it was so wicked dry, I held my cows at home until the 8th of June. I had about 85 cows. The bulls were out there by then, and 20 head of yearling heifers on 100 acres of rye. And they were eating 1.5 bales of hay a day and stayed in good shape. That is powerful stuff.
You like cereal rye better than shred?
They're just a little bit difference.
I mean, I've grazed a lot of trick, but I've never been through.
The differences will be that rye will just come on faster. It'll come on a little bit quicker, and then it won't hold its quality quite as late. The joke is with rye, you need 1,000 head of cows for a month, and then you need somewhere else to go with them. That's not so much of a joke, because it's a time in a spring calving situation. It's a time when you really, really need it, and it's really, really effective.
And like I said, it's timing. If you need to be grazing quicker, the rye's gonna be there. Probably the energy and the protein might come better out of the triticale than the rye. And that's when you guys are focusing and looking what's above ground. So if you wanna understand soil health and what's below ground, rye has the most superior root system of any cereal grain out there. And that will help with infiltration, soil aggregation, the structure of building. The rye is that right behind rye will be triticale. And then maybe barley and oats and all that, and the worst one is wheat. Right, wheat has the worst root system that really doesn't do a whole lot to the system to help build the stuff underneath the ground.
Bryce, what's that? Is it like 400% more roots? It's an insane number.
Oh, it's insane number. I mean, it's just, rye root system is just phenomenal.
When's your planned calving date?
I start March 1st.
What's that, March 1st?
March 1st is when I like to start. I can't fight weather like this. Sadie?
Is it smarter to start out with 50 cattle or 100?
You just do like all of your cattle when you started all this, or did you have a set that you did this?
Oh, when I started, no, I bet I had all of them. All that I had at the time.
I didn't know you had a different, like, okay, I ran this set on this, and it was X number of dollars cheaper versus my traditional, or it just went that was the whole herd to start with.
Yeah, and I just didn't have much else to rely on. You know, the Spanish explorer Cortez, when he came to the New World, burned his ships, so his crew was well motivated. I didn't have no. It's make this work or.
You mentioned 6 to 7 acres is what you come up with for a year-round acreage cost.
That's
200 cows for 12 months.
That's what I was trying to keep track of. How many acres did the cow use? If I planted feed to bale, cow that was charged out to her. If
Food pasture.
pardon?
Does that include your grass pasture?
Cropland. How many acres of cropland per my operation is based on summer grass. You know, I turn them out in the summer, and then my crop acres, you know, is what I have to get through the winter. I'm still fortunate enough I can rent some corn stalks or milo stalks, and if I can, you know, I added that back in. I haven't watched that as closely here lately.
So you're saying they should 7-ish acres of pasture and then additionally 6 to 7 acres of crop ground.
Yeah.
For 6 months of the.
Just kind of a general statement, I guess. If you have pasture acres and you got X many cows for that pasture, and then you look at wintering them, if your cows to farm ground ratio is at or closer to 10, this gets a lot easier. Gets real easy. And I have overproduced hay. I'm guilty of that. We're all guilty of overproducing hay. I got to back off of that here again. Kind of got traumatized by the past few years of drought, but.
So we were talking about a little bit about stockpile forages and cereal rye and cow condition. If you didn't move to cereal rye and you leave those lactating cows on this stockpile, this photo period sensitive stuff, I mean, is it have enough nutrient density? We're gonna maintain condition on it, or
I have run it's best to be off of your stockpile feed by around the 1st of April, because we start to get warmer, wetter, and just seems like those cows are in the mood for something green by that time. I have run on stockpile feed from February 7th to May 7th successfully. And that year, I got like 125 cow days per acre. I had a really good crop. My stockpile feed concept doesn't disappoint, it usually over delivers. And that was a time where I'm sitting here like, if I don't get over this, I ain't even gonna be able to lay it down to plant something in. And so I'm starting on the other end of it to get over it. But that year, that particular group of cows went from grass, corn stalks, stockpile feed, back to grass without anything.
But you feel like the milk production you're getting just as well as if
Yeah. Yeah. They did, it's gonna be the same quality as what you're usually baling, or I think it's probably better.
Yeah, I do. Worst case scenario, you put a lift up.
Yeah.
Get protein in.
In these dry years when, you know, 22, 23, even last year, if you need to stretch it, I like the cake distillers that Midway has. It's 28% protein, and they will come running for that. And just a half to 2/3 of a pound of that will keep their manure flat. And that was, I kind of needed to grind her down maybe a little bit harder. In these drought years, now 23, I raised absolutely none. That was so wicked bad, right? I had neighbors that didn't harvest Milo. Okay, that just doesn't happen. Usually you always cut some 40, 50 bushel Milo. They pulled in and pulled out. I didn't have anything. And when that happens, go to the next, what's the next crop that takes advantage of the next season? I planted some more rye. And the way the weather worked out, by the 1st of March, just as fast as they could calve, I'm getting them out of there, and it just ran over me. But I have run on this all the way through the season.
The beauty of the photoperiod sensitive trait is the way that it retains total digestible nutrients after going into dormancy. We tested it in August and then tested it again in February, and it changed less than 0.5%.
Yeah, I've tested, like, I remember taking a test towards the end of February, because yeah, like, I could just hear people say, oh, you let that go and ruined it by leaving it in the field, and it was like 9.6 protein and 73 relative feed value. A guy talked to me just the other day about grinding hay, and he said, if you have good hay, they'll eat it, but if it got rained on, and then they don't eat it, and then you gotta grind it. And I have some bales that got rained on, and I looked at them, and then I look over here at my feed that I didn't touch, and it looks fantastic, and these bales don't look that great.
Are you running BMR then?
Oh, yeah, this is a BMR. Yep.
Derek, I said earlier, are you adding any other diversity species into that mix right now, or?
I'm not against the diversity, but on my place, if I take away the weed control, that's all I get. And so I went back to the sorghum so I could address weeds and get that big volume of some of the diversity that you put in there. You know, this plant don't yield very much, and I needed the yield because I don't have a lot of acres to play with.
So would you be interested in like a German millet or a millet that where, because we all don't have uniform grains, so there's places where you don't get the production of the stand, but yet the millet can fill in those little gaps that have that kind of diversity in there.
A trick that I have, this is a very legitimate trick. My very close second choice to this PPS would be that long maturity brachytic dwarf forage sorghum. that's developed for silage. In fact, that was the first crop I planted the stockpile with. But you've got to plant that past the 20th of June so that it doesn't make grain. And but it's a good product. Very legitimate thing to do is mix half of that with this PPS and plant that at like 10 pounds to the acre, just so that your talls don't shade out your shorts. One thing I tried, again, these hot, dry spells were just killing me for trying to get a crop established. So I said, okay, got my own equipment. I'm going to plant this Burkitic dwarf forage sorghum. I'm going to plant it early with the planter. I'm going to get a stand. Now I'm just going to take my combine and I'm just going to cut the grain off the top. And that was one of those days where you come home and you want to say, I ain't ever doing that again. you want to have your day, but don't dwell on that. The problem I had, I took a load of it to the elevator, and the guy dumping my truck said, you get something come apart in your combine. There's a whole bunch of trash in there. You got something come apart, okay? Well, all of those BMR leaves packed around my fan, and I couldn't get any air. So I kind of rigged up some expanded metal around that, and so I could pull air, and I got it harvested. And I might try that again with my expanded knowledge of just those differences. Maybe there's a little different hybrid. I might try that and just see where the balance is between a grain yield and a bigger yield of BMR forage. And if you want an example of how the big industrial ag complex wants control of us, I mentioned that that's what I was going to do to I think he was a Pioneer seed rep. I said, I'm going to cut the grain off of the top. He just looked mortified. What are you going to do with it? Well, I'm going to haul it the elevator. It's grain from sorghum. It's grain sorghum. I mean, he's just, you can't do that. We got to have control of you. That's wicked out there.
How much N do you put on your?
You're planting feed. So whatever you like to do. I like fertilizer because fertilizer is horsepower. Now down the road, cycling all this back in, you have got to be building a savings account of nutrients, and I have not pursued a lot of soil tests for 2 reasons. Number one, this pays so good, I'm happy. I'm happy the way it is. I kind of got in, I have another business that has taken a lot of my time and energy, and so there is probably more to be discovered with benefits of this.
Do you have to have much trouble cutting through the residue? Do you have colder to cut through the trash or?
No, it just, like some of the pictures, I mean, it just ends up laying down so nice that it, and you can follow it with whatever. Soybeans would work pretty good, going from a sorghum to a legume. I have a guy planted corn. Now you're doubling up with a warm season grass. But the PPS, where it doesn't make any grain, it's not going to contribute to volunteer. If you have volunteer, this isn't going to contribute to it. You can follow it with about, I guess, anything you want.
What about milo? Have you tried milo?
I have not tried milo. I haven't planted a cash crop in 3 years. Maybe I can.
Props to you on that.
Pardon?
I said props to you on that.
Well, I haven't missed out on anything.
If you want to see anything that's going to be more profitable, then plant your cropland into a grazing mix right now.
Right.
Yes.
Have you ever grazed standing milo, or has anybody ever grazed standing milo here?
that is a question that's coming up to me
Because to
more.
my knowledge, you can get like 400 cow days an acre on that.
Okay, just my opinion, if you're looking at grazing milo, I would plant one of those forage sorghums. They're bred for at least a 80 bushel grain yield, and you got all of that BMR forage. I would go to the forage sorghums like that Brachytic dwarf. But that's a question that is coming up more and more for me. Another question that's coming up is, can we have grain on the plant like that Brachytic dwarf and still graze it? I don't know.
You have to strict graze it, because you want to limit them on that.
Yeah.
But according, the difference between your grazing standing milo and this other, sorghum, you're knocking back a lot of cow days, aren't you? From, say, 400 to, what was you saying?
100.
I probably missed some, but, okay, 100. So,
There's a gentleman in Missouri that has a good article on
Yeah.
that. You've seen that on Milo?
yep.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
So I went this year with my mix, I went back to the old rocks orange that used to be planted around here years and years ago for silage. I threw 8 pounds of that in because I wanted the grain and I wanted the sugar content in my mix this year. It put on grain. My cows, I didn't limit my cows, I let them have it. I haven't had any problems.
You let them have a big field?
Whatever,
Okay.
I sectioned off, because I'm a fall carer, so as I put my bulls out, I just sectioned off, so I was fortunate to have water early on without chalk knives, but I let them have, an acre per cow, 20 acres per, section, but I never worried about the grain that was in the rocks orange.
Okay, well if I was gonna start to tweak the mix any at all, it would be adding a forage sorghum along with this to, maybe put some grain in there to see what would happen. But those questions are coming up more and more often. I'm kind of looking at things I may want to try along that line.
The idea what I get on the idea of the milo is the grain is giving so much more energy to that cow. So so what I'm understanding, and this is me understanding it, is that some of the theories are that the sedan as it gets older loses its value, but we're finding it doesn't lose its value. And so they're wanting to keep the energy going, but I'm too lazy to want to go move a fence every day. Because if you got 100 bushel to the acre milo, you don't want your cows to pound it. After a week or two, they'll get over it, but I don't want to move fence that often.
So the grazing milo guy, he talks about going out and estimating yields, so that you can measure how much to give them, and it's a move deal. It's not a just turn and lose.
Right.
What are you don't like moving fence? What's your method that you've used, or you haven't done it at all?
No, I go out and I'll make 20 acre sections, and just put, I put a cow per acre. And then I just let them go on that. I'm just too lazy at my age to want to go to the fence every day. 20 acres will last them quite a while.
So Kevin and Jared, so what's your thought, the new thing coming through is the virtual fences, right? And
Yes.
So have you guys thought of looking into what that could return for taking your, I didn't want to be lazy like I would do, with getting how that would make that virtual fence and move those cows for me.
I'm sitting back right now and watching, and that's one of the things that we will probably talk about. So I'm gonna we're gonna have a tour on the eastern part of Kansas this summer, and one of our stops is gonna be with a producer that's running about 400 head of cows that's went to virtual fence. I really wanna do it, I can't write the check yet.
Right.
Because, some places they want you to buy the collars, I think, I can't get my mind. I'm in my own road on that because of the dollar, but I think it's cheap. I think you could really make a lot of benefits to that with the virtual grazing. I think you would do things year round with that virtual grazing that we don't do today.
Yeah, it could be a game changer. It's really gonna change that cow into a harvester, that you're gonna have a lot more control over what she can do. That virtual fencing, I remember talking to a guy at the no-till on the plains when it was in Salina. I was pretty devoted attendee to that. This would have been probably 2007. And he said, I have seen the technology exist. Why it took from 2007 to 2024 for that to be commercially available, I don't know. I don't know why it took that long, but I haven't looked into that, I guess. I haven't looked into that either.
I've looked at it, but like I said, I don't wanna write the check.
What's the cost per cow that you?
One company wants $200+ per cow for the collar, you own it. And then depending on if you got cell phone signal or satellite signal, you can get away with it, but if not, you have to buy a $5,000 repeater station that you own. Other companies are just leasing you the collars like $30 a head, and they own the collars because the technology is changing. Some of them are trying to work with the technology to bring it forward to where you can tell when that cow's is in heat, how that's all gonna work, when they're calving. So the technology is just rapidly changing. So it's across the board, and then reliability. Downey Ranch is the one there by Wamego that is doing it. They used one company last year, took them off mid-year. In 24, 25, they've been very happy with the second company they're demoing.
I think companies that you rent the collar, you also are buying the towers. So
Yes.
there's $3,000 minimum tower kind of cost.
Yes.
Depending on a lot of these guys run this stuff in Slump Hills where they're having a lot, so they're having to have quite a few towers to try to keep that on site.
You probably just answered my question as to why from 2007 to now that it hadn't been commercially available. And this is what I think in the ag community we need to be screaming about a lot louder. They had to figure how much of a percentage they're gonna take.
Well, and we're here today learning about how to make this work. Right now, I'm going to encourage anybody to try anything different with your cow herd on a smaller scale. This is when we're going to be really profitable as cattlemen this year, probably for another year or two. When's the best time to experiment? When you have the money to do it. So that's one reason. Let's experiment on a smaller scale with anything you have an idea on. There's no foolish ideas until you try it.
One thing I tried a couple years ago was I had forage sorghum and rye blended together, kind of a full rate of both, and planted that around the 20th of June. Just set the drill, for the total. My theory on that was the forage sorghum's gonna come up, dominate, because that's its season. That's not rye's season. I'm asking a lot of it to just lay there, but it is tough, and it's not its season. Okay, the forage sorghum come up, did well, and I think I even chose to maybe hay that off just to see if that would get the rye going, and it never did. And I had someone asked, well, what if you would have planted it, at different times? And yeah, that would be good to have a trial of that. Just plant that so much every week and see if there is a sweet spot in there where that may work. And that's why, yeah, it's important to try things. I think our future is in companion and relay concepts like that. Sadie?
What I've been trying to convince my dad to do is burn off one of our biggest pastures that we have so we can restart.
Yeah. Well, do you smoke cigarettes? You could just.
We're looking at doing some, we've got some pasture ground that abuts the farm ground, and, we've had a couple years of drought, we had a huge hailstorm, and I just can't make beans pencil, so we're trying to come up with a plan to, you know, we didn't get rye or sugar anything in the ground this fall to figure out a way to run cattle instead of put out beans or, you know,
Well, this,
or wheat, and so like, what's the first thing I need to be?
Could he plant oats this spring?
Oats, I guess my plan is to put in oats this spring, hay the oats, we've got it in a couple different fields, and we, you know, we've got three different fields, and then we'll section them off, and then after the oats are done, burn the oats out, and then come back in with the sorghum sedan, and I don't know if that's, and then just water them out of the pasture.
this always comes up when crop prices are low and cattle prices are high, then everybody is like, well, maybe I should get in the cow business. Now, just the very second that changes, them guys can't shoot that cow fast enough.
My theory is that we'll do it now, and that potentially we'll replace the wheat in the rotation.
Yeah.
I never make any money on, you know, wheat anyway, so my theory is that I'll do it this year on some, because the wheat's already in the ground, on some acres where we're gonna be soybeans, and then just take extend the rotation a year and or replace the wheat crop going forward.
Whenever I get questions about what can I plant here, what can I plant now, let's just, in this area, let's just kind of roll back to, you've got about 3 basic crop choices and 4 times. If it's, like we're coming up here into the spring, if you're gonna plant like early spring, you can plant oats. You get the summer crop, it's sorghum based. Now you can vary with different traits or mixes, but that's gonna be your base. And then you get later in the fall, oats. I love a mix of oats, 2 pounds of Sudan, and a pound of turnips, or whatever your choice of brassica. Plant that around the 10th of August, or whenever you notice the nighttime temperatures start to drop below 70, that's your time to plant this. So oats, you have 2 different planting times, and then you get into the fall, then you start your winter cereals. So it's 3 basic crop types, 4 different planting times. If you've got an opportunity, I want to plant something, I think I got moisture to get it going, go back to that cheat sheet, and that's your basis of what you're going to plant from.
Do you have enough moisture out here? I've been gone too long, because I'm from eastern Kansas, but still have stuff here. Can you mix triticale and oats? I'm gonna try that this year. I'm gonna use the winter triticale this spring behind my sedan for a hay crop. Because everything I'm reading is the triticale won't fertilize, so it won't put a seed head on, but it's gonna produce volume. And so it's gonna complement your oats for a hay crop.
I've heard of that, Bryce, you might be able to comment on this, but I have been told before that you about have to add a full rate of both.
Yeah, you get burned a lot because it really doesn't take a lot to trigger fertilization, right? So we've been planting a lot of winter wheat in March.
Right.
And it's still fertilizing.
Okay.
So where it's at in that stage where it gets cold enough, and we think we just had like a, you know, one day it dropped to 15 degrees for a little short time, and then it was 28 the next day and all that, that was enough to fertilize it, right?
Yeah.
So I've sold a lot of grain, a lot of rye in spring, telling you guys to plant it in February, March, and it's not gonna go seed, and they call me back on man, put seed on. You know, and so if it even remotely tries to head, you know, it did go through fertilization, you know, but it's so weather dependent, and what it's gonna be, it's a crapshoot, you know, whether it'll fertilize or not.
Yeah. Just something I thought I'm gonna try it this year on a few acres.
Sure.
Have a spring trip?
Yeah, there is a spring trip.
There is.
We probably need to, we could take a field tour. Like I said, I don't have as much to show you as I would have liked. I would have liked, and you're all welcome to drive up to this field and look, but we're gonna go 2 miles south of the bridge, and then west. I put a fence post and a yellow grocery sack at that corner, and we'll just pull in. You don't even, it's so cold out, you don't even have to get out of the pickup if you don't want to. But I want to kind of get you ready for what you're gonna look at. This isn't as perfect as I could have made it because I had to plan for today. So the cows that I'm starting to graze, they've been on this paddock too long, but I'm gonna take the fence down, let them in another strip. And, but I have demonstrated that it's okay to go out and feed on this. If you have a piece of land that is really marginal, you really want to supercharge some residue and some nutrients into that. Plant this stockpile feed, graze it, and then if you bring hay from, if you're able to buy hay from somebody else's land and feed them out in that, you're just pumping more nutrients into that. So you'll see where I've fed a couple bales yesterday to stretch this a little bit. And yeah, we'll go look at that. You may not want to get out because it's so cold, and we can come back and if you have any questions about maybe what you saw, but my plan there is there's two groups of cattle. They're going to get put together, and I'm going to need to get over this field after today and the weather straightens out a little bit. I'm going to be grinding across that because I'll have rye screaming at me that it's ready to go by that time. So we can make our way out there and have a look and then come back here to